The white envelope was lying on the kitchen counter, illuminated by the soft morning sunlight pouring through the window. It looked ordinary, almost harmless, until I noticed my husband's handwriting across the front. My heartbeat quickened as I unfolded the single sheet of paper inside. There were only 6 words written in thick black ink. "Pack your things and get out." My hands began to shake so badly that the letter slipped onto the floor. For a long moment I couldn't breathe. 12 years of marriage, countless sacrifices, endless dreams, and every promise we had ever made suddenly felt as though they had been erased by one cruel sentence. But instead of crying or begging, I picked up my phone, stared at the screen for several seconds, and replied with only 2 words. Those 2 words changed everything. Before we continue, if you believe kindness deserves a second chance and that love should never be judged too quickly, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who believes in hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to Tales Maybe for more emotional stories that remind us how powerful compassion can be. My name is Marin Holloway, and until that morning, I believed my life was wonderfully ordinary. Our small home stood at the edge of a peaceful neighborhood where children rode bicycles after school and neighbors still waved from their porches. Every morning began with sunlight spilling across the wooden dining table while birds chirped outside the kitchen window. My husband, Callum, usually left for work before sunrise, and I stayed behind tending to our flower garden while working remotely as a freelance illustrator. It wasn't a luxurious life, but it was one filled with little routines that made every day feel safe. At least, that was what I believed. The previous year had not been easy for us. Callum had lost his management position after the company where he had worked for nearly 15 years unexpectedly closed. Although he found another job several months later, it paid much less, and the stress quietly settled into every corner of our home. Bills became difficult to manage. Repairs around the house were postponed. Vacations became memories instead of plans. Still, I never complained because I knew how deeply Callum blamed himself for circumstances beyond his control. I believed marriages survived difficult seasons by standing closer together, not farther apart. What I didn't realize was that silence can grow louder than arguments. Callum stopped laughing during dinner. He spent hours staring at his laptop without saying a word. Even when we sat together on the couch watching old movies, it felt as though an invisible wall separated us. I assumed he needed time. I thought patience was the greatest gift I could offer. Looking back now, I understand that sometimes people hide their greatest fears behind the quietest smiles. That morning, after reading the note, every terrible possibility raced through my mind. Had he found someone else? Was he secretly unhappy for years? Had I failed him without realizing it? The questions came faster than the answers, and every second felt heavier than the last. I wandered through the house touching familiar objects as if they belonged to someone else's life. The framed wedding photograph on the hallway wall suddenly looked like a forgotten memory. The blue coffee mug he always used still sat beside the sink. Everything appeared exactly the same, yet nothing felt familiar anymore. I sat down in the living room, opened my phone, and typed only 2 words before pressing send. "I'm pregnant." The message disappeared instantly. I wasn't trying to manipulate him. I had discovered the truth only the evening before after weeks of feeling unusually tired. I had planned to surprise him that weekend with a tiny pair of baby shoes wrapped inside a gift box. Instead, those 2 words became the only response I could manage while my entire world crumbled around me. Less than 3 minutes later, my phone exploded with missed calls. Then another. Then another. Callum had never called me that many times in our entire marriage. I didn't answer. My heart was pounding too loudly to hear anything else. Outside, the bright daytime sky remained peaceful, almost mocking the storm unfolding inside our home. Children laughed somewhere down the street. A lawn mower hummed in the distance. The world continued as though nothing had happened while mine stood completely still. 20 minutes later, I heard tires screech outside the house. The front door burst open. Callum rushed inside with panic written across his face, unlike anything I had ever seen. His shirt was untucked, his breathing uneven, and his eyes searched every room as though he expected me to disappear forever. When he finally found me sitting quietly near the window, relief washed over his face before guilt quickly replaced it. For several long moments, neither of us moved. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words ever can. As the morning sunlight stretched across the wooden floor, I looked at the man I had loved for over a decade and wondered whether I even knew him anymore. The truth finally emerged slowly, painfully, and with more tears than either of us expected. The note, as impossible as it sounded, had never been meant for me. Earlier that morning, Callum had been helping his younger brother, Rowan, prepare documents for a difficult separation after years of emotional conflict. Rowan had temporarily stored paperwork inside Callum's work folder while rushing between appointments. During the confusion, Callum accidentally placed the wrong envelope on our kitchen counter before leaving for work. The cruel message had been intended for Rowan's estranged spouse, not for me. But although the explanation answered one question, it exposed a much deeper one. Why hadn't Callum realized the mistake immediately? Because he hadn't looked back. He admitted he had been so overwhelmed by stress that morning that he left without even checking what he had placed on the counter. The realization shattered him almost as much as it had shattered me. He confessed that work pressures, financial fears, and constant anxiety had clouded his judgment for months. He had become so distracted trying to protect our future that he stopped protecting the present. I listened quietly while tears rolled down both our faces. Pain has a strange way of exposing hidden truths. For the first time in many months, Callum admitted he felt like a failure. He believed he was disappointing me every day because he could no longer provide the comfortable life we once enjoyed. Instead of sharing those fears, he buried them beneath long work hours and endless silence, hoping the burden would somehow disappear on its own. I finally told him something I had wanted to say for years. I had never married him because of money. I married the man who once spent an entire rainy afternoon helping an elderly stranger fix a broken fence. I married the man who secretly bought groceries for struggling neighbors without expecting thanks. I married the man who stayed awake all night beside my hospital bed after my father passed away. None of those memories carried a price tag. As sunlight filled the room, something inside both of us quietly began to heal. Then I placed the pregnancy test on the coffee table. Callum stared at it in complete disbelief. His knees gave way, and he sat on the floor with tears streaming down his face. The fear that had consumed him moments earlier transformed into overwhelming gratitude mixed with heartbreaking regret. He realized how close one careless mistake had come to destroying the family we had spent years building. The weeks that followed weren't magically perfect. Trust rarely repairs itself overnight. There were counseling appointments, difficult conversations, financial planning sessions, and many evenings where we simply sat together talking honestly instead of pretending everything was fine. We learned that healthy relationships aren't built by avoiding hard conversations. They're strengthened by having them before misunderstandings become mountains. Months later, our home felt different. Not because our problems disappeared, but because we stopped carrying them alone. Callum found joy again in small moments. He returned to gardening with me on weekends. We painted the baby's room ourselves instead of hiring professionals because every brushstroke reminded us that imperfect things can still become beautiful. Friends and neighbors noticed the change long before we did. Laughter returned to our dinner table. Music played through the house again. Hope slowly replaced fear. On a bright spring afternoon, our daughter, Elara, entered the world surrounded by sunshine pouring through the hospital windows. Holding her tiny hand reminded us that life often gives second chances in unexpected ways. Every sleepless night, every diaper change, every exhausted smile became proof that love grows stronger when people choose forgiveness over pride. Years have passed since that unforgettable morning. The faded note still rests inside a small wooden memory box in our closet. Not because we enjoy remembering pain, but because it reminds us how fragile communication can be. Beside that folded piece of paper rests another tiny note. It contains only 2 words. I'm pregnant. Those 2 words didn't simply stop a misunderstanding. They reminded 2 frightened people what truly mattered. If this story has touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who may need hope today, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Tales Maybe so more people can discover stories that celebrate forgiveness, family, and second chances. Special request: before this story ends, please comment, "Love deserves honesty," if you believe open communication can save even the most fragile relationships. Your comment may encourage someone silently struggling today. Life has taught me that the strongest marriages are not the ones that never face storms. They are the ones where 2 imperfect people choose, again and again, to hold each other's hands while walking through the rain. Misunderstandings may shake our hearts, fear may cloud our judgment, and difficult seasons may test every promise we've made, but kindness, patience, and honest conversation possess a remarkable power to rebuild what seems broken. Every sunrise offers another chance to choose compassion over anger, understanding over assumptions, and hope over despair. Sometimes the smallest words carry the greatest weight, and sometimes 2 simple words can rescue an entire future. If our story leaves you with anything today, let it be this: never let silence speak louder than love, because the people we treasure most deserve to hear what lives inside our hearts before it's too late.